Welcome to a Bible Talk Easter special. I'm your host, Sunny G, and today we'll be reading The Life of Jesus Christ, A Journey Through the Eyes of God, Part 4. A little while later, Jesus went to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Jesus saw a man lying near the pool of Bethesda who was an invalid for 38 years. He told Jesus he has no one to help him into the pool when the water is stirred up. But Jesus told him to pick up his mat and walk, and to stop sinning, or something worse may happen. Shortly after, Jesus called the 12 disciples together and gave them power and authority to drive out demons and cure diseases. Then he sent them out and told them not to bring anything along. A while later, Jesus found out that John the Baptist had been murdered. On Herod's birthday, Herodias' daughter danced for him and pleased him so much that he told her she could have whatever she wanted. She asked for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. John was killed because of Herodias having an affair with her brother-in-law Herod, who was getting pleasure from his possible niece. Once Jesus found out about his death, he withdrew by boat and crossed to the Sea of Tiberias. The 12 disciples eventually made it back from their mission and reported to Jesus what they had done. Then Jesus took the 12 to Bethsaida and went on a mountainside. Jesus saw a great crowd approaching them and wanted to feed them. A boy gave them 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. The people sat in groups of about 50. He then took the bread and fish, looked up to heaven, and gave thanks. Jesus fed about 5,000 men there, plus women and children. Immediately following this, Jesus dismissed the crowd and sent his disciples on a boat ahead of him. Then he went on a mountainside to pray. He stayed there by himself until night. Praying by himself in a solitary place was a common theme Jesus did. Shortly before dawn, Jesus walked on the water towards his disciples, while the winds and waves were treacherous. The disciples were terrified and thought Jesus was a ghost. Peter then got out of the boat and walked towards Jesus. But then he took his focus off him and saw the intense waves and winds around him and began to sink. But Jesus reached out his hand and saved him. When they climbed back into the boat, the winds and waves died down. When they had crossed over, they reached Gennesaret. When they got out of the boat, all the people recognized Jesus and were healed when they touched the edge of his cloak. Later on, Jesus went to the vicinity of Tyre and entered a house. A Greek woman born in Syrian Phoenicia begged Jesus to drive out the demon out of her daughter. Jesus said one of his classic metaphors and told her, "First, let the children eat all they want, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." She then responded with a clever metaphor of her own and said, "Yes, it is, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Jesus told her that she has great faith and her request is granted. Then one day, Jesus was praying privately. When he was finished, one of his disciples asked him to teach them to pray like John taught his disciples. Jesus then taught them the Lord's Prayer. La- Later on, Jesus went around in Galilee and avoided going to Judea because the Jewish leaders wanted to kill him. But Jesus' brothers told him that if he wants to be a public figure, he has to stop acting in secret and show himself to the world. His brothers said this in a sarcastic manner, for even they did not believe in him. Once his brothers left for the Festival of Tabernacles, Jesus went thereafter, not publicly, but in secret. Now the Festival of Tabernacles was a major Jewish feast. The Pharisees and chief priests wanted to arrest Jesus and seize him, but no one laid a hand on him. Then Jesus went to the Mount of Olives and appeared at the temple courts. When he got there, he seen a woman caught in adultery. The Pharisees and teachers of the law made her stand before them and was going to stone her. Jesus then started writing on the ground with his finger. The Pharisees kept questioning Jesus whether they should stone her, because in the law of Moses it says they should. Jesus then straightened up and rebuked them, and then told the woman to leave her life of sin. A little while later, Jesus took John, Peter, and James up a high mountain. Jesus transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes were as white as the light. Moses and Elijah appeared and was talking with Jesus. The disciples fell face down to the ground and were terrified. And when they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone. Later on, Jesus appointed 72 others and sent them out 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place. Jesus then went into the region of the Decapolis. Jesus healed a man there who was deaf and could hardly talk. Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears. He then spit, touched the man's tongue, and he was able to hear and speak. Later on, Jesus feeds 4,000 men, plus women and children, with 7 loaves of bread and a few fish. Then Jesus and his disciples came to Bethsaida, where he healed the blind man. He spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, but the man seen people that looked like trees walking around. So Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes again, and his sight was restored clearly. Later on, Jesus healed a man born blind from birth. He spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. He then washed in the pool of Siloam and went home seeing. A while later, it was winter, and Jesus was at the Festival of Dedication, also known as the Feast of Hanukkah, which was an 8-day celebration in Jerusalem. Jesus was in the temple courts, walking in Solomon's colonnade, and was talking with the Jews, telling them he is the Messiah. Whenever Jesus spoke to any crowd, he would often speak with authority, and people would be amazed. But these people were angry and picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus escaped. Then Jesus went across the Jordan to the place where John was baptizing, and many people came to him. Then one day, the 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, sent word to Jesus that his friend Lazarus was sick. Jesus really loved that family, especially Lazarus. Jesus stayed 2 more days where he was on purpose, knowing that Lazarus would die during that time, so that the disciples and everyone there may believe in him. Then Jesus and his disciples headed for Bethany, where the family lived. Lazarus had been dead in the tomb for 4 days. Jesus comforted the sisters and showed compassion towards them as they were weeping for their brother. When Jesus entered the tomb, he started to cry, and the people knew that he loved Lazarus. Then Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead and told him to come out. A while later, Jesus and his disciples were coming down a mountain, and a man called out to Jesus that his only child is possessed by a demon. Jesus says that they are an unbelieving and perverse generation, and for how long he should stay and put up with them. He then rebukes the impure spirit and brings the boy back to his father. Then Jesus and his disciples are back in Capernaum. The collectors of the 2 drachma temple tax asked Peter if Jesus pays the temple tax. He told them yes. Jesus then instructed Peter to go fishing and to take the first fish he catches, open its mouth, and in it will be a 4 drachma coin to pay for both of their taxes. A little while later, Jesus drove out a demon from a man who was mute. When the demon left, the man was able to speak. But the people there said it was by Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that he is able to drive out demons. Thanks for tuning in. Join me next time as we'll be reading Part 5.